gonna have this conversation right now. King, legend, talk. Legend. King, legend, talk. Talk. King, legend, talk. Legend. King, legend, talk. You are now tuned in to King Legend Talks.
Alrighty, everybody, this is your boy King Legend 757. Welcome to an amazing interview that I'm about to have right now with the one and only Vasi in the building, okay? Listen, this person right here is super talented singer, songwriter, has been in the entertainment business her whole life, okay? And so that means there's a lot to talk about, a lot of experience that she has, and a lot of wisdom as well. But just based on her experience. So without further ado, thank you so much for coming through the King Legend Talks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Magnificent. It's 2024. How has your year been so far? I mean, you got some hit singles that just went to the stratosphere. So how are you doing right now?
2024, man, has been such a huge blessing. Very, very unexpected response to the music that I started putting out at the top of the year. But it's been really great. It's been really great. I've been introduced to so many people, literally in like the last month. So my life has changed pretty drastically this year, but it's been a huge blessing. Just really a lot of fun to be experiencing.
Wow. Well, definitely congrats so far on all of the success you had just in the first 2 months of 2024. No telling what's going to happen by December. Right now, you're really walking in your purpose. But it took you a minute to get here when you think about it, because you started out so young in the entertainment business, and people looking at you today that don't know your actual past may not even understand that, yes, I might look young, but I've been in this business for a while. Like, I'm seasoned in this. So to kind of get people caught up on speed, can you give us a quick rundown on just your childhood, your upbringing? Everybody knows you have so very supportive parents. That's no secret, right?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and just kind of get people acquainted with your past so far.
Sure. So I'm originally from Fayetteville, North Carolina. My mom is from New York. My dad was born in Mississippi, but grew up in North Carolina. So I always had that influence of like North-South growing up. And so my mom, being from New York, was the one who exposed us to our local theater downtown in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And so that's really where the first kind of seeds were planted for me to even be thinking about entertainment. It was really a hobby for me that I would do with my siblings. My brother actually would get me ready for auditions and for rehearsals and stuff. He's older. I'm the youngest of 3. And so we would do theater together. And then one day my brother was looking for auditions for himself for Broadway shows, and found one for The Lion King on Broadway, and convinced my parents to take me. And he had so much faith in me and was like, don't take her if you're not ready to move to New York, because she's going to get it. And then I got it. I did an open call here in Atlanta. So Atlanta has always been weaved in and out of my story. So it's actually really cool that I ended up living here. But I didn't have an agent or anything at the time. So it was an open call. I auditioned with over 200 other girls, and I got it. And we moved to New York, and that was really when I first started to think about entertainment as something as more than just a hobby, because I was exposed to the possibility of it actually being a career in a way that I could, really live my life. So I was doing the whole like auditioning for commercials, doing modeling stuff. And at that point I did get agents and representation. But then I moved home after I did The Lion King. I moved back to Fayetteville. But I started songwriting while I was at The Lion King. I was really interested in like guitar at that time. So I wrote my first song when I was 10, backstage at The Lion King.
I was about to say.
I was inspired by writers like Neo and Mariah Carey. I was like obsessed with them at that point in my life. And I knew that they were both songwriters. So that's how I got into it. Fast forward years, later, I'm a teenager, and now I start coming down to Atlanta to work on music. I decided that was really where I wanted to focus in on. And I was doing bilingual, like pop R&B. And then fast forward a few more years, I went to college and was studying music production, music theory, music business, journalism when I was in college. And then when I was in college, I decided to transfer. Within that time, American Idol reached out to me. I did American Idol, and then I moved to Atlanta after that. And I'm breezing through this.
Yeah.
Moved to Atlanta after that and really started kind of hustling out here as a songwriter, just to meet people. I moved to Atlanta completely like fresh. I really didn't know anybody out here. And that's how I really started to find friends and find a circle with songwriting. And then the pandemic happened. And again, I was still in the secular space. The pandemic happened. Everybody's world got flipped upside down, and I was not excluded from that.
Right.
And I ended up moving back to Fayetteville at that time because I really needed to recalibrate. My mental health was bad. And I went back home, and really I didn't do any music for over 2 years. Like, I thought that I was wrong about doing entertainment. At that time, I really spent time reconnecting with the Lord and watching sermons and reading my Bible. And really surrendered at that point. I was like, you know what, God, whatever you want for my life, that's what I want for my life. And I thought the music and entertainment was not a part of that equation. And so then top of last year, I moved back to Atlanta, and I asked God, I said, wow, God, like, we're really about to move back. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? What do you need from me? And I so loudly heard him sing music. And I had never heard God's voice that loud or clear in my life, and it stunned me. And when I moved back, everything just kind of fell into place. I got exposed to all the really amazing things that are happening in the Christian hip hop space. Atlanta has a really, really thriving community in CHH. And like I said, I hadn't written songs. I hadn't even listened to music. I was kind of really out of it, kind of detoxing for 2 years. And I wrote my first Christian R&B songs last year, starting probably like April. And then I started releasing them in September. And now we're here.
Wow. Listen, y'all, she gave y'all the quick rundown of her journey, and I love the way she did that, because now that that's out the way, we can really, really talk about the experiences that she really been through, specifically like maybe your mental state when you were going through all of these changes and this roller coaster in your life. I think it's important for people to understand that you had Christian roots. You went to a Christian school. You went to public school. And that's interesting, because with you being in the entertainment business as a child, how do you even balance all of that? Like, one of the things that stood out to me the most about the story when I heard it about you was the fact that you were still going to school and your parents were taking you to like the studio. As long as you kept your grades up, you were, going back and forth. What was that experience like for you?
So I went to public school for most of my life. The only time I was in a Christian school was when I was in The Lion King. And it was private, and they would really work with my schedule a lot, especially because doing The Lion King, we had matinee shows on Wednesdays, so I would have to leave school every Wednesday early. But my parents didn't play like about education. My parents were very disciplined. And that went beyond The Lion King throughout all the times that I was in high school and traveling for auditions and traveling back and forth, to Atlanta. School was still number one. Like, they were not stage parents. They were not, looking for me, to provide for the family. It was like, you are still a child, and you need to get your education and take it seriously. And so I think that it wasn't something that I really had to think about, because that was just what it was, right? Like, it was like, this is the reality of like how I'm growing up. So like, this is just what it's gonna be. Right. And I had immense respect for my parents. And I think that we were able to find a good balance of like keeping me a child, even though I was in a lot of adult spaces. That was something that growing up was probably the biggest challenge, like the schoolwork and everything else. Like, that was the easy part for me. I think the most interesting dynamic to kind of balance was how much time I was spending with adults working, and then going to school and being with my peers and figuring out how to kind of navigate that dynamic. But I think that overall it was really just a blessing. It really set me up to be really disciplined, and really value time management.
Absolutely. So like now in retrospect, when you can look back on your life,
Mhm.
and you've probably had multiple conversations with other individuals that probably said, "Man, I wish my parents were that supportive." This, that, and the
Mhm.
third. Does that create a little disconnect from you, from your peers now, when it comes to people that feel like, "Man, I went through the trenches and I didn't have a mom, I didn't have a dad." Like, how do you work those relationships?
Um, I wouldn't say that I feel a disconnect. I think that we all have our stories and our journeys, and mine is mine, and everyone else's is theirs. I don't. I know that I'm extremely blessed to
Hmm.
have had the support, and I do say a lot. Like I don't know how people, especially in entertainment, just because that's the perspective that I have. I don't know how people pursue this without the support of
Without it,
family.
yeah,
Because it can be tough even with family. So I know that I'm very blessed in that area, and I thank God for that. But I wouldn't say that I feel disconnected
right.
from people because I love to hear people's stories. I love to understand perspectives and where people come from. So I'm just happy to learn about other people and how they get through things.
And I love that you mentioned that because it's easy for people to assume, right, that, okay, because you had this set up, you didn't have to struggle the way I struggled. But we
Mhm.
all go through our own journey, our
Right.
own fight, and spiritual warfare
Yeah.
is real and it
Yep.
hits us all. And so,
Yeah.
um, I don't know if you want to talk about this too much, but I do know from your story, from what I heard, you actually dealt with depression. Like you went
Mhm.
through this season in your life where even maybe suicidal thoughts was a thing at one
Yeah.
point.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, can we kind of talk about that for a little bit? Because I do know that was something real that you experienced. And I really want to help that one person that could be going through a similar moment right now. How did you process getting out from that place, that
Mhm.
mental state? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about this and share my testimony about this because it is by the grace of God that I'm literally alive today. And so I think that where it kind of started stemming from was my freshman year of college. There was just like everything was just kind of like rocking my world. There are a lot of different things that were going on in my family life and my personal life, learning to navigate, what it means to be a young adult, being exposed to things for the first time, like in college. And I just I kind of like lost that connection to my faith.
Mm.
Uh, Not 100% though. I was always kind of like I was always the person who's like, come on, guys, like we should go to church this Sunday. But like I was around people that weren't necessarily like into it, and
Right.
so I think I just ended up succumbing to a lot of things that I was just exposed to for the first time. Like I was never around a lot of stuff. Like I really didn't because I was working so much as a kid. I really didn't do a lot of like going to parties and stuff like in high school. Like I didn't do any of
You
that. So
always
I
had
think
that structure set up.
exactly I had that
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
So that when I got to college, I was just exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of different people from different backgrounds, and I lost my way. And I think that when it hit at its pinnacle of like my mental health struggles, it really was. I now have come to understand it as spiritual warfare and the enemy really trying to like trick me into not walking in the purpose that God has for me. And so, but I'm a big advocate for therapy plus faith. Like I believe in medicine plus faith, right?
Right. Right.
Because I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of work for probably like 5 years. I was in like consistent therapy to just like keep myself centered and like figure out what is going on with me. I'm struggling to navigate the world as a young adult. I'm struggling to navigate the entertainment industry as a young adult now. Now my parents aren't here with me. Like, what am I doing here? And so, yeah, I was struggling with depression, anxiety. At one point, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. So I was on medication for that. And really what happened there was I asked my therapist, I said, and I'm blessed, she was really holistic. She wasn't just kind of like a medicine pusher.
Right.
And she was really, like wanted to focus on like mind, body, spirit
Hmm.
there. And I said to her, I said, well, am I going to have to be on this meditation forever? And she said, well, some people are able to get off of it if they figure out some type of, consistency and routine and able to make sure that they're able to keep themselves kind of centered. And other people do stay on it
Hmm.
for life. And I was like, well, if there's an option to get off of this, I want to figure out what that path is. I don't want to have to be dependent on this. And now this is just me, right?
Right.
Everybody is different in the way that they manage these things. But the medicine really did help me get the clarity that I needed to get back on track with my faith journey, right? To help me stay on the straight and narrow to where I am now. And so I was on medicine for about a year to just kind of keep me stable. I keep me, able to like operate at my highest capacity.
Right.
And after about a year, I just kind of started to wean myself off of it. Now, this is not recommended, but this is what happened to me. And I was seeing like, okay, I didn't have a crazy headache today when I, stopped when I didn't take the test. Like, let me see if I can go another day without it and another day without it. And I was seeing like, oh, like I'm coping, I'm managing well. And that really is what I think kind of got me back on this path that I'm on today, where like I really feel like I have beat
Right.
the things that I was diagnosed with. I don't struggle with the same things. And I really have found clarity through God in that.
Now, that's a big deal that you said that you found clarity through God in that, because the question I'm about to ask you, your therapist asked you, and this was the one that stumped you for a while. And it was, who are you outside of what you do?
Yeah.
And so now when I'm asking you this question in 2024, what is your answer? What is your response to that question today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say today, I'm a child of God. I have really surrendered my life and my will to God. And I know that my identity is not in anything that I do. It's not in anything that I've been through, not in anything that I've experienced. It's in who God has created me to be, right? And so I really do focus on, like, I'm on a journey right now reading the Bible in a year. So I follow like a 52-week guide of like, I'm reading the Bible every day. And I'm really learning so much about myself through that process as well. And the way that, like, not only the way that God created me, but God's nature of himself, right? And how, if we're created in his image, how we're supposed to kind of operate as his children. And so to answer that question, I would just say I'm a child of God. I'm on this journey. I'm a, human having a spiritual experience. And, I'm grateful that I've come to that as my peace, and not trying to figure out like the work that I do or what I contribute to society. Is like, no, like I'm here like on a mission that God has set me on. And that has to be my focus.
One of the most powerful things about knowing your identity in Christ is that we no longer look to other things to form our identity.
Yeah.
And what that means is, like, say for an example, if someone would have asked you that question years ago, like your therapist did, you would have still been trying to figure out a way to connect it to the music.
Exactly.
But now when you're connected to the heart of God, you start to realize that I'm here on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
That I'm literally the salt of the earth. And then I'm here to really be an ambassador for Christ. That is my purpose. And so identifying your purpose in Christ, nobody can take that away from you. No depression, no anxiety, no struggle or stress can take your identity away, because even if the world hates you, you remember it hated him first. Like, you're sound in your identity, and you can walk with that confidence and be bold as a lion because you know who you are in your faith. And I think it's important that people recognize that, because so many people struggle with depression and anxiety because they're still trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
And you just got to rely on God. Like, just put your faith in him to help you through that process.
Definitely.
For you, what was your prayer life like when you were going through the toughest times in your life?
Yeah. So like I said, like I had that foundation, right? Like I went to church as a kid. I did the altar call when I was 14. I wanted to stay on that path, but I kind of lost my way. But I always knew that God was there, and like, let me call on it, right? Even if I wasn't necessarily sure of what it really meant to submit at that time, right? And the power of I was at that point in my life, I was kind of fighting to understand what my power meant, right? Especially coming into like my young womanhood, I was like, trying to assert myself. And so even in my prayer life, I wasn't submitting to God in the way that I have learned to. I wasn't coming with a vulnerable heart, with an honest heart, in the way that I have learned is necessary to really be operating in the full will of God and what He has for you in your life. And so I would pray, but it wasn't consistent. And if I'm honest with myself now, it wasn't always honest at the time. So yeah, I think I was praying a lot for my will over His, right? And not necessarily understanding that it's like no, like no. And so I've come to really understand it and appreciate what that submission really means.
See, that's so real that you just said that. And I want people to understand that, like, praying for your will over His. Like, let's just think about that for a moment. The Bible tells us to seek first the kingdom.
Right.
And when you pray for your will over His, you seek your own will first.
Right.
And what you want to do. And then God becomes more like your assistant. And that's what happens to so many people when they have this ambition inside of them and this desire inside of them. But God wants you to desire Him in that way.
Exactly.
And He's going to take care of everything that you need, but He wants you first. He wants your heart as well. Right. And we really have to understand that God wants us to love Him back.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, that's what it all comes down to. And He wants us to be a cheerful giver with that love. Meaning you're not doing it out of obligation. You're not doing it out of duty or tradition.
Right.
It's like a genuine relationship with Him.
Yeah.
For you, I just kind of feel that at that moment you had a mindset change where you started to develop a real relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your music shifted. How did you go from secular to where we at right now in your walk, especially with these two latest songs? Like, how do we get here? Please touch on that for us.
Yeah. So like I said, I was done with music. Like, I thought that it was something I had to throw away completely. I wasn't even singing in the car. I wasn't like singing to myself. Like, I was completely done. Didn't even think about writing for, like I said, like literally 2 years. And when I started writing again, it really was just coming from a place of like my conversations with God, like from me to God. I wasn't writing for an audience. I wasn't writing to think about putting it out. It was just kind of like a practice to just be obedient to God in the way that I said that He told me to do music. And I wasn't sure. I was kind of scared. I was reluctant. I was like, I don't know. Right. And so, but I didn't want to, in the way that I had been asking Him for clarity, He had provided me with that clarity. I heard very loud music, right? And I didn't know what that meant, but I figured, you know what, let me just start trying to figure out what this means for me, what He needs me to do with this.
Right.
And so I just started writing in my house, like just sitting on my couch, like writing for myself. Like I said, no plans really to put anything out. And I think that's what's so encouraging about the way that everything is being received, because I was just coming from a vulnerable place, from like literally me speaking to God. With the first song I released in 3 years was called My Bad, right? It's literally a song about repentance. And it's like, can we just like start over? Are we cool if I just say my bad and we're moving forward in a new way?
Right.
And so it really just came from that organic, authentic place of like what really was happening in my life. And it's so cool to see so many people relating to it. And it's great. It's really exciting, especially given that I wasn't even thinking about releasing it at the time. But yeah, that's what happened.
Music is so powerful. And I 100% know the enemy understands the power and influence behind it.
Yeah.
And so whenever you're doing it for God, you're using that power behind the music to influence people to look at Christ.
Yeah.
And what brings alongside that is retaliation from the enemy through spiritual warfare. it almost escalates it immediately when you're reaching so many people with your voice.
Yeah.
Can you share with us maybe an experience that you've had to fight, you know, with spiritual warfare and when it comes to your music recently?
Mm-hmm. Um, so I that's a loaded question, right? Because the enemy only comes when he sees you as a threat, right?
Right.
And so definitely when I first started releasing my bad, there were a lot of different attacks in different ways. Actually, before I even started releasing the music, I had a health scare where I was like getting dizzy spells and double vision and like all kinds of stuff. And there was a time where I was getting like MRIs to figure out what was going on. And by the grace of God, it didn't end up being what the doctors were thinking that it was. But it was a time where I was really experiencing a lot of spiritual warfare. And I recognized what it was because I was at a place where I was starting to think about putting out music again. I was like, oh, I know exactly what this is. But I made a decision to not let that beat me, right? And to be like, no, I'm going to be obedient to God. I'm not going to let this fear, where I know where it comes from, which is not God, to deter me from doing this and moving forward with this. And also just, I think the enemy tried to kind of like play with my past and make me feel bad about things. And, you're not, who are you to talk about this? And it's like, I'm a new creation. Like, you can't
Talk that
play
talk.
me on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do this to me.
Right.
And so there's definitely been those moments where I have to battle it. And to this day, right, where, there's some people who misunderstand the perspective that I'm coming from with the music. But I just know who set me, who I am in communion with every single day to make sure that I'm living according to what he needs from me. And it's just been a big part of actually building my faith whenever I'm feeling those attacks, because like, oh, we're on the right track. Like, we're going to keep going. So.
Right. That's so powerful. Well, look, it's been a pleasure having you up here on this podcast today. Before we go, I just want you to share with people maybe any words of encouragement that they may be struggling with when it comes to depression, or any advice you can give to a person that's dealing with a similar situation to that right now.
First thing I would say is pray about it. Talk to God about where you're at. He already knows where you're at. Come to him with an open heart. He wants you to. He's like, he loves you so much, and really wants you to lean on him. And there's so much beyond the moment that you're struggling through right now. Life is worth living, especially when you're doing it for God and through Christ. So.
Absolutely. Well, listen, any new projects coming up before we go that we should be on notice about?
Yeah, actually, so I will be dropping the EP soon. Your Will just dropped last Friday.
Yeah.
And go stream that everywhere. The EP's coming soon.
Super fire.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was an awesome conversation with you. I really did enjoy it. I hope people got a lot out of it. Thank y'all so much for tapping into another episode of King Legend Talks.
Thank you.